Welcome. In the first video, I covered the material that you must have in order to use your 3 months of GRE prep effectively and efficiently. If you haven't watched that video yet, I recommend that you pause this video and go back and watch the first video now. The vocabulary is the single most important variable to improve your GRE verbal score. As you go through the official ETS material that I covered in the first video, you will realize that the material is lacking in one thing, that is strategy. The official material gives you a good sense of the content and the quality of the material that you expect to see in the real GRE exam. However, without a strategy, without a very detailed look into the strategy, however, what you will find is the official material doesn't really cover strategy in detail. Strategy is key to success on the GRE, especially because you only have a 3-month time frame to study, and also because the examination itself is timed. So you have a limited amount of time to answer the questions. Without a good strategy, you will not be able to finish your examination in time. Like I said, the vocabulary is the single most important variable to improve your GRE verbal score. The way to prep for the vocabulary is to get your hands on a standard GRE vocabulary list. Now, this is contrary to the usual advice that I give you on this YouTube channel, that is to be very wary of third-party providers. I will give you the same disclaimer again. Be very wary of third-party lists that bear no semblance to the real GRE. Now you may ask me how to figure out if a given GRE vocabulary list that you find online is similar to the real GRE word lists or the real words that you will see on the GRE. Well, the only way to tell is for you to go through the official GRE ETS material and compare the kind of words that you see both in the questions as well as the answer choices of the official ETS prep material, and compare them with the vocabulary list that you find online. I would like to say that there are at least a few providers that have a very good vocabulary list, and you should definitely, as a first pass, go through the entire vocabulary list. Now, once you have gone through that vocabulary list, what you will typically find is those words are arranged in alphabetical order. Now, this is not a bad thing per se, because if the words are arranged like in a dictionary, it just makes your life easier to find words, and also for photographic memory. You can go back and forth and search words, and it just helps. However, once you're done with the first pass of going through all these words alphabetically, you can even do it 2 times. But once you're done with it twice, what you really need now is the strategies that will help you to use these words in order to solve the real GRE questions. You need to learn these words in context, and that is our first strategy. For example, you can have similar sounding words. Appraise sounds the same as uprise. They sound the same because in your brain, when you read words, you're also trying to recognize them by consciously or subconsciously pronouncing them in your mind. And words that sound similar can throw you off. And the ETS test makers really love to throw these kind of traps on test takers. Same thing with essay versus assay. The two mean very different things, but they sound similar. Prodigal versus prodigious. Again, this can be a big trap. What you'll find is as you're going through these word lists, you will come across these words. And because these words are in different parts of the word list, for example, essay and assay will be in different sections, you will not be able to tie them together. And lacking that familiarity, that context, can actually hurt you. The other way to learn words in context is learning words that are synonyms at the same time. For example, capricious and fickle mean the exact same thing, but they are in different sections of your word list. One comes under C and the other comes under F. Trying to learn these separately is not the best strategy. However, learning them together will help you kill two birds with one stone because both these words mean the same thing. Last but not the least is antonyms. There are words which mean completely opposite of each other. If you study them in isolation, that'll be two words that you have to remember by rote. However, combining these GRE words into one list, which are antonyms, can help you remember these words better. Realize that drab and garish are exactly opposite. Drab means lacking in color. Garish, on the other hand, means very colorful. Learning them together will help you save a lot of time and be efficient in your 3-month prep plan. The other reason to learn words in context is because of the way the GRE test questions are constructed, whether it's a reading comprehension or it's a sentence completion or a sentence equivalent question. Most questions typically try to compare or contrast things. Therefore, they will use synonyms or antonyms. Therefore, learning these words together is the most ideal way to learn not just the meaning of the words, but also how to apply those words to solve the typical GRE verbal questions in context. Again, like I said, the GRE loves these traps. Practicing everything under one overarching framework will really help you to achieve your ultimate goal, that is, to answer the ETS GRE questions. Now, another strategy is to pay attention to words with secondary meanings. Again, these are words that the GRE loves because these can be traps. An example of a word which has two meanings is the word liaison. Take a moment to think up all the meanings of the word liaison that you can think of. This is an uncommon word which I'm sure we do not use in our daily language. However, this is a word that has shown up on the official GRE material. So you really need to understand that there are certain words which can have two meanings. The first meaning is a secret love affair. We all know Jack and Jill went up the hill, but did you also know that Jack and Jill went up the hill to have a secret love affair? Jack and Jill had a liaison. A secondary meaning is acting as a go between. For example, a government liaison officer. When two sides are warring, for example, in World War II, you had Hitler on one side and you had Winston Churchill on the other. Hitler was from Germany and Churchill was British, and these were foes in World War II. Now, if they had to talk to each other in a battle, typically there would be a liaison officer who would be as a go between, an intermediary, or even a broker who can help broker or negotiate between two warring parties. And that is another use of the word liaison. Now think about how different both of these words can mean. Used in different contexts, these can really throw you off. Therefore, your second strategy is to pay attention to words with secondary meanings. The third strategy is to pay attention to word sentiment. What I mean by word sentiment is the positive or negative connotation of the word. What does the word mean? Now, this can be very, very tricky because a word can either have a positive shade or a negative shade depending on how or where it is being used, and the GRE just loves it. This is also a very powerful tool in your toolkit in order for you to do the process of elimination, which is a strategy for you to choose the correct answer out of a multiple choice set of 5 answers. For example, the word bland. Usually, when we use the word bland in normal conversation, we typically say or use it in sentences like, this food is bland. And what that means is that this food is tasteless. So you can give it a negative sentiment and you can say bland is negative. However, be warned, depending on the context, the same word can also have a positive connotation. Bland, for example, has a secondary meaning, which means something that is soothing. Therefore, something that is soothing is a good thing, a good guy, a positive sentiment. Therefore, be very careful when you're using strategy 3, trying to combine it with strategy 2 and looking at all these strategies holistically as you're trying to figure out the right answer. Another word which is a bit easier is the word blithe. Now, blithe usually has a negative sentiment associated with it. And there are ways for you to understand why blithe has a negative sentiment. But the goal of this slide here is just to tell you that there are words like blithe which can have a negative sentiment and you need to be aware of that. I will have self-contained modules which will be other videos which I'll be posting in the future, which will go through each of these strategies in depth, in detail. And these are self-contained modules that can really help you to completely go through all the universe of the GRE words and classify them into positive or negative sentiment while providing you the right connotation and the way to remember these words. But that is for another day. The last strategy, as you're preparing for the GRE vocabulary, is to pay attention to the degree. What I mean by degree is evident if I use an example. A GRE word is encroachment. Now, if you know what encroachment is and have a vague idea, you would know that encroachment is the same as intrusion. However, for the GRE, the ETS might test you on the shade or the degree of the intrusion. Therefore, knowing that encroachment means a gradual intrusion can be the difference between a right or a wrong answer. For example, consider this sentence completion question. Over several years, comma, the locals had dash upon the government land. Now, just based on the blank and based on your own past experience, intrusion seems to make sense. And if you are in a hurry, you will just go and check intruded as the right answer. However, in the GRE sentence completion, there is also a very crucial clue. And the clue in this sentence is the phrase over several years. Now, clearly, if something happens over several years, it means it was gradual. Thus, intrusion or intruded is not the correct answer. Rather, encroached is the right answer. Knowing the subtle differences between the different shades and degrees of meaning in similar words or words with similar meanings can help you be more confident as you take the test and also help save time. As I said, I'm going to cover an entire module on degree in a future video, and hopefully that module will be self-contained and comprehensive so that you will get more experience utilizing this strategy. So the game plan. Once you're done with the standard word lists, go through them maybe once or twice, A to Z, which will take you maybe a few weeks. The next step is to do additional vocabulary practice, which will hopefully help you. Especially, the goal of this practice is to use the different strategies to ensure that you get the maximum points by getting the most questions correct in the GRE. The questions that I plan to pose for your practice in future videos are the real deal. These are actual words that have been used in the official GRE over and over again. So if you're going to do this material on Great Prep, you will not be sorry because you will have practiced on the real material. Like I said, that is the fundamental philosophy, the overarching framework that you have to keep in mind when you only have 3 months to prepare for a GRE. You have to practice on the real deal. You cannot be practicing on third-party content which is night and day from the real material. Okay, now that you've gone through all those 4 strategies, let me give you an example. The word is juxtapose. This is a real GRE word that has shown up in a past GRE exam or on the official GRE material. So this is legit. Juxtapose. You typically have 5 choices to choose from. Impose, discern, span, place side by side, and contrast. Now, given these 5 choices, what you will realize is that, again, the way I have constructed this question, all of these 5 choices are legit GRE words. These are words that show up in the official GRE material. So as you're learning the meaning of juxtapose, you're also familiarizing yourself with the other 4 or 5 words that have shown up in the GRE. So you're being efficient with your time. You're killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Now let's practice our strategy. We have 4 steps in our strategy. Step 1 is the context, juxtapose. Now, if you go back, what you'll typically find is that juxtapose doesn't really sound like any other word. It is a very unique sounding word. Also, there really are no synonyms or antonyms that really come to mind when you look at juxtapose. So you move on to step 2 of your strategy. Is there any secondary meaning? Not really. If you have gone through the modules on grade prep, you'll know that juxtapose is really a very unique word. Move on to step 3 of your strategy. What is the sentiment of this word? Once you've completed all the material on grade prep and go through all the videos, you'll also realize that juxtapose is really a word that is very neutral. It's neither positive nor negative. And as you go through the list, you'll also find that you can label each word to be positive, negative, or neutral. Impose is negative, discern is positive. So from the process of elimination, you can get rid of these two choices right away. And that's where step 3 of your strategy really helped. Now you're left with 3 more choices, C, D, and E. Let's move on to strategy 4. Strategy 4 is to understand the degree. Now, if you think about span, it seems like a trap word. Same thing like impose, right? Juxtapose, if you look at pose and you think about how your mind thinks about it, the word pose sounds familiar. So in the answer choices, what GRE can potentially do as a trap is use a word like impose, just so that you will fall for the trap. But because you know impose is a negative connotation, you have a safety net, a double check, and that's why you will not fall for choice A. Now, you might also vaguely remember from your memory that juxtapose has something to do with space. It's something to do with position. Now, span, choice C, is actually neutral, and also it seems to line up with your memory. And this is really dangerous because if you look at choice C, span, and you just go and check it, you're going to lose points on this because span is not the exact degree or the shade of the word juxtapose. So in strategy 4, you can eliminate span. Now you're left with place side by side and contrast. Again, utilizing strategy 4, the attention, the degree, the extent, you will have to focus on the degree, place side by side, or contrast. Now, this is really tricky because juxtapose can mean to contrast two things. Juxtapose actually means placing two things side by side to compare or contrast. Now, clearly, contrast can be a standalone word. It also seems to be neutral but slightly too precise. It seems to be a standalone word as well. Like, why would you say juxtapose? You could just use the word contrast. So that's why the correct answer is D, which is place side by side. So by using strategy 4, you basically will learn how to use the degree of the word and the meaning of the word, different shades of the word, to choose the right answer and not fall into a trap. Another example is the word postulate. This is again a legit GRE word. Choices A to E are also legitimate GRE words. Now, if you look at the word postulate and you don't know the meaning, the first word that might come to your mind is the word postule. Now, postule has nothing to do with postulate. Postule actually means something to do with the disease. Now, that is the first trap. Now, if you start thinking that way and you say, okay, you know, if I'm going to use my strategy 1, I need to put things in context. So, because you know that postule and postulate are two different words, and you have gone through strategy 1, you know that you will not fall for the trap and you will not associate postulate with postule, because if you make the grave error of mixing up postulate and postule, postule stands for some kind of a disease. It is a symptom of a disease. And as soon as the word disease comes to your mind, you might look at the answer choice pandemic, and a pandemic is also related to disease. It just means a widespread disease. You're just going to choose choice A and move on. And that's exactly wrong. That's exactly what the ETS test maker wants you to do. So strategy 1 can be very helpful in this question. Moving on to strategy 2, is there any secondary meaning for the word postulate? No. Strategy 3, sentiment. Is this a positive or a negative word? Now, postulate, if you go through the sentiment of each word and you will realize that postulate actually has a positive connotation. It is a positive sentiment. And you can go down and label the others as positive or negative. As you can see, answer choices B to E are all positive. So now you have eliminated the first choice. And within answers B to E, you now need to focus on strategy 4, which is the extent or the degree. Now, conviction sounds to be very strong. The degree seems to be very high. You can postulate something with conviction, but that is not necessary. In this context, postulate seems to be of a medium degree, and therefore the word suggest seems to be the closest in degree to the word postulate, and therefore answer choice E is the correct answer. Well, I hope this video gave you some new information about how to work with GRE verbal strategies. Like I said, when you have 3 months to prepare, you need to focus on the right material, and then you need to complement that right material with the right laser focused and sharp strategies. And this video walked you through vocabulary development through 4 strategies which can be used in context to solve GRE, sentence completion, sentence equivalence, as well as reading comprehension questions. I'm going to post self-contained module videos of all the strategies that were covered in here so that you have a very good idea and you can practice on these strategies. One thing about the GRE is the idea of muscle memory. Practice, practice, and practice. You have to practice on the right material so that you see the similar kind of words, the similar kind of diction, the similar kind of style, vocabulary that is used on the official GRE. If you see that again and again and again over your 3 months preparation, on the day of the exam, your subconscious memory will have developed this muscle memory and you will be able to choose the right answer without having to worry too much about other things. So on the exam day, you can choose the right answer subconsciously without having to put too much effort. Good luck and stay posted for more videos to improve your GRE verbal strategy.